Now. All your New York Islanders news and expert Islanders analysis from the fourth line in Bridgeport to the first line on Long Island. This is the Dump and Chase podcast. What's up, everybody? How's it going? I am Shane Blackburn at Shane B NHL. This is the Dump and Chase podcast. We are a little bit late tonight, and I apologize. That is solely on the shoulders of myself, Shane Blackburn. But we are ready to go, and we have a lot to talk about tonight. Along for the ride, we have at Tasman19, Andy Graziano. We have Michael Wilhoff, who, of course, you could still follow at Michael Wilhoff. And we have at RDNHL, Rich Diaz Rodriguez. How's everybody doing tonight?
Very well.
Doing well, Shane.
Lovely.
Here after the interesting delays and trouble we had getting ready, we're ready to go. We have all four of us today. Google did not screw us out of one of our hosts tonight, so we all four of us are here for possibly the most. I've been excited for an episode of Dump and Chase. We have so much to talk about. Obviously, starting off 3-0, beating the New York Rangers, and I had to ask a lot of people today if they knew what time it was.
Oh, yes, I saw this.
Because it's 6 past Lundqvist.
Ooh, that's original.
Hey-o.
No, it's not original at all, but it's funny, so it works.
Dum-dum. He's here all day, folks.
No, clearly I'm not. Clearly I'm here an hour late.
That's true.
But close enough. I do apologize for being late. Previous commitments ran a little later than they were supposed to and then expected. Apparently Pete has to go to sleep in 15 minutes, so we got to rush this episode, get an hour's worth of talking in 15 minutes.
He's actually warming up his milk as we speak.
You know, warm milk is awesome. But I digress. And we start with the New York Islanders, who are 3-0. This is their best start in God knows how long. The New York Islanders have forwards who can score, 4 defensemen right now who can play defense, and a goalie who can rob one of the best offensive players in the game and steal games, because that's exactly what happened last night, but we'll get to that. We'll start with the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Islanders. That one was on Friday the 10th. Obviously a 5-3 win for the Islanders. Guys, any things you guys saw in that first game that really stood out, good or bad?
Trying to think back to that win. I think, the opening couple of games is always kind of an evaluation period. I don't like to say that because the games obviously count. It's not like a training camp preseason type of situation, but I think with the lines obviously being so fluid, we didn't see much chemistry coming out of camp. It was nice to see them back on the ice. Obviously, an immediate contribution from Johnny Boychuk. I guess the thing that stands out for me the most is the way the defense just has a different feel to it. You don't see so much of the panic that we saw last year. You sense a calmness back there when the Islanders are defending. Now, granted, that took a little bit of a crap last night for the first 40 minutes, but for me, that's the biggest difference. Is a much different feel from the blue line core right now.
I couldn't agree with you more, Andy. I believe that I can't remember the last time I tweeted this out. First game is I think it's the first time in a long time where I feel as if a point shot, a blue line shot, can have a chance of going in. I never felt so confident about that situation before. I can't remember the last time, but it does feel different. It feels as if the team has a lot more confidence. It is responding well to adversity, as we saw last night. As far as that game is concerned, the only thing that sticks out is the defense. The defense for me was quite resilient game one.
Yeah, I'd agree with both of you guys. I think it's a different experience watching the games now and not thinking to yourself, okay, when's the breakdown going to come? When are they going to be skating around with nobody knowing where they're going? And it just seems like, I don't know if it is just Boychuk and Letty showing up and kind of settling everybody down. People move down the depth chart one slot each. But it feels like they're calmer. They can control the puck. They possess it out of the zone instead of just trying to chip it off the glass and get out and change as quick as possible. So I think this is something we're going to see going forward, and especially with Wisnowski and DeHaan on their way back. DeHaan a little bit closer than Wisnowski, but once they show up, man, I think this D is going to be it's going to be light years better than we've seen ever, or at least in the last decade. It's been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Before everyone gets on my case, wait till we get to games 2 and 3. But in game 1, I saw something I expected from the beginning, and that was Brock Nelson was going to be ready to go from the get-go and be one of the top players on the team. Something that was disappointing was the play of Ryan Strome in game 1. Yes, he had 2 assists. They were 2 quiet assists, though. And I don't want to say he didn't look like he belonged, but he looked a bit out of place or out of character, maybe. He didn't look like he 100% belonged in the NHL in game 1. Other than that, the defense looked great, and obviously in net, we looked fantastic. So moving on to game 2, which was the next night, which was Saturday the 11th. That was home against Carolina, so the home opener, which, by the way, at the home opener, I thought it was great that they didn't come out individually. I thought it really showed that they are a team. There is no individual accolades. There is no who are we going to focus on more, who gets the bigger applause when they come out. They were just a team, and that's what they came out as. I know a lot of people had complaints about that on Twitter, but I happen to be a fan of that. But in Game 2, we'll start with Mike this time since he went last time. Mike, what did you think in Game 2? What stood out to you, good or bad?
I guess we'll start with the good. I think anytime you play your biggest rival and you go on the road and you're all amped up, you maybe play a little bit tight. You're trying so hard in the beginning to kind of weather the storm that you go out and you get yourself in trouble. And we saw that with Cizikas taking the kneeing penalty, which may or may not be questionable. There were some bad calls, there were some bad non-calls. But that aside, I almost thought that as soon as he took that penalty, when they went on the PK to start, it's like, oh, here we go again. They're coming out, they're all amped up, they're ready to go, and then all of a sudden you're killing off a penalty. But I think they did a good job of weathering the storm when they had to. And the post I put up today about Halak and how he kept them in that game, and I think you guys will touch on it too. But he made saves that Nabokov wouldn't have made last year, that Nilsson wouldn't have made, that Poulin wouldn't have made, and he did so at times where, had the Rangers scored, the Islanders would have been in a lot of trouble. They were either down a goal, and had they given up another, then all of a sudden you're chasing 2 on the road, and that's very tough to come back from. But it seemed like every big save he made gave them new life, and then all of a sudden, they held on just long enough, and then 4 straight goals later, they're skating out of there with a win.
Andy, what did you think?
Well, I mean, Saturday night, the home opener, I thought, let's just go over that real quickly. The 4-3 Islanders win. Outstanding job by Game Ops, as you touched on, Shane, in the introductions. It was different. It was original. It was made to celebrate the final home opener in the history of Nassau Coliseum, and it was just very classy and just an excellent job all around with that. And I think you're right in kind of pointing out the team first philosophy. We're not individuals. We play together. We come out together. Game Ops had floated that to Tavares, Okposo, and Nielsen earlier in the week to kind of get their okay on it, and they were very much behind it. As far as the game goes, it's a typical Islanders-Hurricanes game that we've seen in the past. It kind of mirrored a little bit the game the night before. It wasn't too different. I think the Islanders were getting physically manhandled in the first 30 minutes until Matt Martin laid out Eric Staal with what I deemed to be a dirty hit from behind. It actually knocked Staal out of the game. And then right after that is when Martin had the fight. Again, it's a game where last year in the third period we might have given up that lead. But again, like going back to my original point, things just seem much, much different on the blue line this year, and that's what we saw in Game 2.
Mm-hmm. I agree, guys. I don't feel as if the first 3 games have shown a complete Islanders team. I think that you guys would all agree that they're coming up with goals and coming up with successful exercises, if you will, at the right time. Third period yesterday being the prime example. But the Islanders haven't taken a game from beginning to end and completely dominated. Tomorrow would be a great start for that. I'd like to see what they can do with a team like San Jose. And if I can assure you though, if they do fall behind to a team like San Jose, if they can come back from something like that, then we have something to talk about the next few weeks.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
it's just such a small sample size, Rich, that to say that we're happy that we're 3-0 is an understatement. Of course we are. It's the first 3-0 start in like forever.
Yeah.
I mean, not forever, obviously, but it's a great start, and it's 6 out of 6, and you can't really ask for any much more than that at this point. But problems are still there. Things still have to be fixed. The penalty kill is still a mess. I don't care what the stats say last night. Again, last night for me was all about Yaroslav Halak and no more. You could point out the 4 goals in the third, which showed obvious resilience, but if Halak doesn't keep them in the game, to Mike's column that he posted a couple hours ago on IslandersInsight.com, the Islanders are never in position to even take 2 points in that game. So
You know, I want to ask the listeners this, and you guys can chime in and we can move on. A couple of Ranger fans today, I said this on email, said you guys didn't win. We lost that game last night, and
no, Halak won it.
Exactly. I don't necessarily think the Islanders have completely gelled.
No.
But I just believe, like you said, small sample size. When I said to you guys over the email, I believe that every game going in is going to be a one-game playoff game. Like, that attitude is what I meant. Like, I feel as if every game is that tenacious and every game is that well scrutinized, because if it was 0-3, we'd be asking for Cappy's head and we'd be, pitchforking Snow's house. So,
Well, I think Butch spoke to it in the post game. I don't know if you guys watched the post game last night, but Butch made mention of that. Howie had asked Butch, kind of put him on the spot a little bit, about Butch playing on those LA Kings teams that weren't very good, and then all of a sudden became very good. And Howie was kind of trying to get Butch to say, well, what changed in the room? And Butch kind of mentioned that it's a lot different attitude when you come in as a team and you say to yourself, well, even if we play our best, it's very unlikely that we're going to win this hockey game, versus the attitude which seems to be permeating in the Islanders room now, which is they believe that they can win every game they play. And that's what Butch made mention to in the post game, and I think it was a very well-made point.
Agreed.
Well, real quick before we move on, I think confidence is a very fickle thing. If you win your first 3 games of the season, all of a sudden it does feel like you can win every game, no matter what the history of the team's been like, and it's been bad. There's no sugarcoating it. So when you come out and you've had as good of summer as the Islanders have had, and you add Boychuk and Leddy right before the season, and the defense that you've had in the minors for so many years is finally ready to make its NHL debut, everything starts to come together. You win your first 3 games, it's like, oh man, here comes the Stanley Cup, right? But if one thing goes wrong, I'm more interested to see if what if they get blown out by the Sharks? What if it's a 7-0 game and the Coliseum's half full?
Yeah,
and all of a sudden, it's how do they respond? The good teams will write it off. They always say it's on to the next one, but the good teams really do move on to the next one the minute the reporters are out of the room after that first game. So it'll be interesting to see how the Islanders handle a loss. They're not going to go 82-0. I hate to spoil it for you, but we'll see how they respond when they do lose.
Real quick, we'll start with Shane on this question. Let's through the first 3 games, let's discuss who our top 2 surprises are. Not surprises, but the top 2 guys who we think played the best, and the top 2 disappointments through the first.
I'm gonna slow you down just a bit, Andy, because I have an idea I want to do, and I'm gonna do that because it's the first week, and I'd like the surprises and disappointments. But for each week, every time we do a podcast, I want to take all the games that were played before that podcast and do best forward, best defenseman, best line.
Okay.
So we'll do that a little bit later, but right now we'll do the top 2 surprises, and you said 2 disappointments?
Yeah, let's just say the top 2 guys who have exceeded your expectations through 3 games, and the top 2 who haven't met your expectations.
Okay, well, let's start with the forwards, and the top 2 have exceeded my expectations are Nikolai Kulemin and Corey Conacher.
Okay.
2 disappointments, and we can get into why a little bit later if we want to.
Yeah, just the names. Yeah, we'll rattle it off.
And the 2 disappointments have been Reinhart, not Straight, because I kind of knew what we were getting with Straight. So Reinhart, oh, disappointments is a tough one. Reinhart and Hickey. I would say Hickey hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been what I had in my head expected from him coming out first 3 games.
Well, we can discuss that offline. I vehemently disagree, but go ahead, Mikey.
2 surprises. I'll go with Conacher as well. I knew he was going to be quick. I didn't think he'd be as good as he's been so far. Other surprise, Halak, I guess just because I've been thinking about it all day, wrote about it, and now just having a goalie back there with that kind of skill is a big boost to the team. For disappointments, I think it's too early to say anybody has been a disappointment. I would lean towards Reinhardt, but he's a rookie. He's playing NHL speed for the first time. I expected him to struggle, even though you hope he kind of turns it around quicker. But I don't really have any disappointments per se.
Mm-hmm.
Rich?
Biggest surprise, Brock Nelson. I didn't expect him to come out with so much fire.
Right.
And Nikolai Kulemin for sure. Andy, I just want to make a quick point that you pointed out this the other day on a tweet, which is correct. You got to see Kulemin live to see what he does away from the puck.
Absolutely.
He's amazing away from the puck. Really, really cool stuff. My biggest disappointment, I agree with you, Mike. It kind of, I don't feel as if I feel like I'm forcing this, but Reinhardt is my disappointment, if you will, just because he has made some glaring mistakes, but rookies will do that, and I hope that people give Reinhardt a longer leash than they gave Donovan, but let's see. But right now, that's my one disappointment.
All right. I'll go with my fellow short man, of course, Corey Conacher up front. And what's amazed me about Corey Conacher is not the 1 goal in 3 games he's put up. He's always first in the offensive zone, and 90% of the time, first back in the defensive zone. Lays out Dan Girardi last night. It was unbelievable.
That was awesome.
This guy is just playing with heart, soul, fire. He's exactly what that first line needs: a defensive first presence and a ferocious forechecking presence. And for me, he's doing it all in that sense. Nick Leddy is my second one. You could see the lessons that he learned in Chicago, and he's brought over to this team in terms of transition. We knew he was a smooth skater, but the transition game with him back there has just improved 100 times, in my opinion. Disappointments, Reinhardt to me does not, 3 games in, rookie, blah, 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 he does not look NHL ready. He just looks very slow of foot. He just can't keep up with the speed of the game right now, and if they don't do something with that soon, that's going to be a major liability. And for me, Matt Martin, and I like Matt Martin. I think he brings a lot of fire to that fourth line, but when was the last time he hit something other than the boards?
He had a shot yesterday. Yesterday he had an open net.
Right, but have you ever seen somebody go in for a hit and hit the boards so frequently?
I haven't noticed, but
he kind of gives me that sense a little bit that he's trying too hard. He's defending hits champ 2 times running, 3 times running, whatever it is, but he's maybe going out of his way to be that guy.
Notice the game. Watch the game tomorrow night, and watch the next 2 games. The next 3 games before our next podcast, and we'll discuss it next week. But watch Matt Martin on his hits, and count how many times he actually hits the player versus hitting the boards.
Okay.
And we'll talk about it next week.
I can definitely agree with Matt Martin, Andy. So you're definitely not alone there. All right. So shall we move on to possibly?
Just real quick, I'm sorry, Shane. I apologize, but I just want to point this out real quick. If anyone who's seen the E60 feature on Travis Hamonic tonight, it'll obviously be replayed. It'll obviously be on YouTube shortly. You have to watch it.
I want to make sure I see it.
If you've lost a parent at a young age, even if you haven't, but especially if you have, it's going to hit you pretty hard. I know I have. I lost my mother at 9, and it kind of hit me with a brick. It made me think about things I haven't thought about in a long time. But, I'm glad it brings Travis out into the limelight, into the mainstream, because he truly deserves it. And we just got a message from somebody, I won't mention names, whose nephew lost their father over the summer. And Travis actually Facebook messaged this kid back to talk to him personally about his experience.
Wow.
So that's the kind of guy that we're talking about in Travis Hamonic. And when you see the E60, if you haven't seen it, you'll understand what Travis does every day for these children that have lost parents at such a trying time in their development. So.
Well, I definitely have to make sure I see that. Obviously, I wasn't able to watch it tonight, so I have to make sure I get to see that. But let's move on to more uplifting and happy news, and that is the Islanders taking care of business, no matter how ugly the first 40 minutes of that business were. the Islanders taking care of business against their crosstown rivals, the New York Rangers.
Yep.
I will say there's one thing I want to point out before we move any further into this game, and that is the Rangers finally got a taste of their own medicine. The Rangers are so used to not playing good hockey and being bailed out by Lundqvist and squeezing out a win that when it happened to them last night, their fans were in a tizzy. The Islanders played, and I'm not going to hold anything back here, the Islanders have played absolutely horrendous through the first 40 minutes of that game. There's no way around that they played horrible. And Halak kept that game close and is the only reason that the Islanders had a chance to score 4 in the third. So Halak took over the role of Lundqvist in the Rangers' corner of what the Rangers are so used to their goalie doing, and instead of him doing it, the Islanders did it to them.
What's most impressive, Shane, is that he gives up a softie relatively early.
Stinker.
That's like Nabokov-esque, right? So he gives up a really bad goal, and then he just finds it in himself to turn his own game around on the fly and help his team to victory. That's the difference between now and the last 24 months, the last 36 months of an Islander season. It really is night and day.
And that spoke volumes to me of what we're getting in Halak. The fact that he was able to shake that off his first game, because there are a lot of people last night who it was their first time playing in this Islander-Ranger rivalry. And the fact that he was able to let that first goal go in, and it was a stinker. The crowd, the crowd got on him at MSG. He was able to shake it off and play phenomenal hockey throughout the rest of the game to keep the Islanders close.
That second period was his best period as a New York Islander. Yesterday's second period the Rangers were all over the Islanders. I mean, there was shots from every angle. They threw everything at him. And he just stood on his head and just put on a show. He put on a clinic, and he saved that team. He saved the Islanders from a disaster.
Yeah, I agree with that, Rich. I think, 20 saves on 21 shots in the second period. Maybe it comes from a couple years of watching Nabokov and Poulin and Nilsson, but does Halak look really calm in net? I don't remember one time of him sliding out of position or there's some scrambles in front when there's a rebound or whatever, but he wasn't ever out of control, to my eyes at least. He may not have displayed the best rebound control in certain situations, but it seemed like he always knew what to do when things kind of got away from him. He wasn't swimming at all. He wasn't fighting his defenseman for position. He was always kind of at the top of his crease, right place, right time, square to the shooter every shot. He did what he had to do to win on the road, and that's something the Islanders haven't had, obviously, as we've touched on. But I think, if he plays like that, if he plays even, 90% of what he did last night to gut out a win and then go on the road and beat your crosstown rivals, I think the Islanders are pretty well set.
Hey,
I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Andy.
It was definitely a rough 40. I think the Rangers came out as I expected they would on home ice after the drubbing at the hands of the Maple Leafs. I kind of expected the game I saw from the Rangers. I didn't expect the Islanders to have to defend quite that much, but again, Halak was the story in the first two periods. But let's not take away from the fact that the errors that the Ranger defense made, which were uncharacteristic errors in my opinion, were forced on them from the resiliency in the forecheck that the Islanders showed. Capuano gave them a really good ringing out in the middle of the second and third periods, and they really forced a lot of those mistakes. The Tavares goal was great forechecking by Josh Bailey originally. Michael Koska basically gives the puck to Nikolai Kulemin for pretty much a slam dunk for Tavares. The Okposo goal, his 100th of his career early in the third period to give the Islanders a lead that they wouldn't relinquish, was again a strong forecheck behind the net by Tavares, which led to another Koska giveaway. The 2-on-1 where Grabowski's shot goes off Klein's stick, they were all created by the tenacity of the Islanders and the fact they never, again, an old Islander team we might have seen fold in that situation when they were down 2-1 and just getting absolutely stomped. They might have folded, but this team is a different team. As I've said it's a different team from from the goaltender on out. Everything's got a different feel to it this year. And look, I'm not going to sit here and proclaim that we've turned the corner and we're going to romp to a top 3 spot in the conference just over 3 games. It'd be ridiculously naive of me to do that, considering that I think fans today have forgotten that the Rangers started last year 1-4, 3-6, and we're in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Right, and that Lundqvist has had a bad season for the last 5. A bad start for the last 5.
The Rangers will turn it around. The Rangers are going to be there in the end. Why? Because of Lundqvist and because their defense will get it figured out. So don't think they're going away and they're going to flop themselves to a last place finish, because I don't think, in my opinion, it's going to happen. But at this point, we just need to not worry about Ranger fans and just worry about ourselves and our own team. Let them talk all they want. Shane mentioned before that the rivalry is clearly back, but a lot of what I'm seeing out of Ranger fans on social media, both Twitter and Facebook, it looks to me like almost like they're scared that we're good again. They used to just be, there was no big brother, little brother. They were the only brother. And it's not like that anymore. And I think they're very intimidated by the fact that we're good again. And kind of a lot of the attention's on us this year with the closing of the barn, etc. And they don't like that. And I'll tell you something, hearing Let's Go Islander chants on TV from the Garden last night was pretty darn impressive. Whoever made it out to the Garden last night as an Islander fan, well done.
Yeah, my brother went.
Because you guys were loud and noticeable on TV, and that's well done.
He said it was awesome. It was awesome.
While we're still talking about the Ranger game, I do want to say I want to talk about Brock Nelson for a minute or two.
Again?
Yes, I do.
We can talk about him for more than a minute or two. So.
First of all, I don't know how many of you guys follow me on Instagram or Twitter and Facebook, but Brock Nelson was my man crush Monday this week.
I saw that.
Because Brock Nelson is the man. But the one thing I'm going to say, a lot of Brock's goals obviously have come because of Johnny Boychuk this year.
I think he actually aims for his knees now.
But,
I really believe that.
But the one
I don't like to say that, Shane, though, because the goals are a result of Brock Nelson doing what he's supposed to do, and that's planting himself in front of that net in a good scoring area.
Absolutely. But I wanted to talk about last night's goal.
Okay.
Because last night's goal showed that Brock Nelson belongs in the NHL. The poise and the patience he had with the puck.
Yes.
When Strome threw it out of the corner, and instead of maybe even last year, you see Brock Nelson just fire that right into Lundqvist's pad. But Nelson held off the defenseman, waited for Lundqvist to make his move, and just slid it right under his pad. It showed the patience that you need with the puck to be a top 6 forward in the NHL.
Agreed.
And I think that speaks volumes about the player Brock Nelson is becoming and is going to be for these New York Islanders. Now, I want to use that because I want to lead into the best forward of I say week in air quotations because we only played 3 games because the first game was on a Friday.
Okay.
So I am going to start with
Brock Nelson.
I'm going to start with Mike. I want to know who Mike's top forward was this week.
Top forward Islanders or top forward NHL?
Definitely Islanders.
All right, so we're sticking with the team. Top forward, it has to be Brock Nelson, right? Not to beat a dead horse, but he was the points leader. NHL 3-star snub aside, who cares about that? He did it all, and for the team to place the expectations they did on him in the offseason to say, we're going to try him on Tavares' line. From day one, they said we're going to try him up there. So he had that going into camp. Regardless of where he is now, he had this thought in his head of, I'm expected to play as well as a top 6 NHL player, having only, I think, 75 games of experience coming into this year. So maybe it didn't work out on Tavares' line, but the fact that he's slotted in as second-line center and has done everything that's asked of him and more, he's the prototypical 2C. I think he's miles above anybody else, at least as far as the first 3 games go. I think he's definitely been the best forward for the team.
So that's 1 vote for Brock Nelson. Rich, what do you got?
Without a doubt, John Tavares. Tavares has shown tenacity. His shot has improved. He is absolutely taking no guff from any opponent. He is acting like a captain. He is leading on the ice, off the ice. You can tell that he has gained confidence. In the locker room, he's all business more than he's ever been. He is completely focused. He's hungry. You can see it in his eyes when you meet him, and you can see it on the ice. Some of the passing that I've seen, well, the Corey Conacher goal against Carolina was absolutely all him. Amazing goal. The one that Conacher just buried. Oh, no, it's just an open, gaping net.
I do think Tavares has eyes, not just in the back of his head. I think he has 4 sets of eyes, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and 2 on each side.
It's just a pleasure to see this young man grow every single season, and I'm blown away by his play. Absolutely ridiculous.
And Andy.
It's easy for me to say Brock Nelson or John Tavares. I both think they're excellent choices, and Rich and Mike both make excellent arguments for those selections. But I'm gonna go Johnny Boychuk. I think that what he's brought to this defense, what he's brought, more importantly, to the locker room. And I'll go back to a quote that Johnny Boychuk made before the first game against Carolina when he was being interviewed by one of the mainstream outlets, and Boychuk turns around and goes, look at this selection of guys in here. Look at this team. We are ready. We are ready to win. And I think that's the attitude that's been lacking the last decade on this team. You could see the experience he brings over from Boston. You can see the calm that he brings over from Boston. You can see the system and the structure that he brings over from Boston. Guy has a cup. I think he has made such a tremendous impact on that blue line, him and Letty combined. So for me, he's just been absolutely the standout for me.
All right, real quick, let's I'm gonna go with Brock Nelson. I think everyone was expecting that.
No.
So real quick, let's jump into best defenseman. We'll start with Andy on this one.
Oh, come on.
I mean, do we even have to do this? It's just double nickels all the way, right?
Yep, double nickels.
Man, Chuck.
I think it's a sweep for Boychuk. I mean, no counting necessary, right? I mean, do you see a shot against the Rangers that got, a foot off the ice, didn't touch anything, side net?
All right, so I think best defenseman is unanimously double nickels.
I get chills thinking about it, man. I just get chills.
It's a laser, man.
Let's move on to my favorite one because I have a real good one here, and that's best line. Who's been the best line?
Ooh, best line? The best line. I got it. It's the third line. It's the checking line because the Islanders finally have a checking line, and that is so cool to say because Josh Bailey, he was never going to be a 30-goal scorer. He is playing the perfect role for him, and alongside Kuhlman and Nielsen, that third line center, he's been born to play that role. The third line, I mean, they can match up against the other team's first line if they have to. They do their job. They're responsible defensively, and they alleviate pressure, which is key for a young team and a team that's ready to turn the corner, not necessarily, reenact those scramble drills we saw all season last year.
All right, so we got one vote for Kuhlman, Nielsen, and Bailey. Andy, what do you got?
Oh man, best line. You know what? I'm gonna. Wow. You know what? I'm gonna say I'm gonna cop out and say all of them. I think they've all.
What a bum.
No, they've all look. The Islanders for the first time in a long. Mike has a great point in saying that we finally have a true, legitimate checking line with probably the best checking center in the NHL in Franz Nielsen. But we finally have 3 lines. Tremendous depth up and down that lineup when you look at it, and you've seen it in the variety of goal scorers that we've seen this year so far through the first 3 games. You can't just stomp out that Tavares line anymore and expect to hold the Islanders to a shutout or 1 goal against. The depth is definitely visible, and for me, that's been across the forward lines. I think they've all done their part equally, in my opinion.
I'll answer that question this way, and I'll do it quickly. The line that needs to improve, if you will, is the fourth line. The fourth line is showing some holes, is showing some wear and tear. It needs improvement. It should be. I think Cappy could think about shaking it up in a few games, maybe bringing up an Anders Lee and sitting down a Matt Martin or a Kyle Clutterbuck, because that's the only line I feel is weak. Isn't really doing what its job or it's fulfilling its role. In this case, energy. Casey Zizekas has moments of brilliance, but that's the line for me. That's the way I'm going to answer this question. This is the line it needs to improve, the fourth line.
Okay, and I'm going to go with what has been my favorite line to watch after the first game. They weren't fantastic in the first game, but that is the second line of Grabowski, Nelson, and Kuhlman. I've dubbed them. I was originally calling them the 3 centers line, but I have redubbed them the 3 Musketeers. because I think that is absolutely fantastic. They, especially once they all become more familiarized with the position they're playing, meaning Grabowski and Strome become more familiarized with playing the wing. I think that is going to be one of the most dynamic second lines in the league, period.
Yep. Great.
All right, so we're going to step aside for 2 quick seconds. When we come back, we'll get to your questions.
The Dump and Chase podcast is in no way affiliated with the New York Islanders, Bridgeport Sound Tigers, or the National Hockey League. The views expressed by the host, panel, and guests are their own.
All right, so let's jump right in here. Let's jump right into the questions, guys. We'll start off with Andy. Andy, you're going to start off the questions here, so let's get this going.
All right, I'll go with the top question on the top from Joe Carb. He asks, how does Conacher go from being waived by Ottawa and released by Buffalo to the Islanders' first line? We constantly hear about the Isles' talent in the system, and this guy comes in and takes the first line vacancy, another Cappy blunder. Your thoughts? I'd say Corey Conacher's come in and done a pretty darn good job. It's irrelevant to me. You know, in Ottawa he was misused. Buffalo really didn't want to let him go. Jack Capuano wanted him from last year. And I think Corey's came into that established. It's not NHL 15 where you put your best players all on one line. There's got to be a balance. And I think we're seeing that with Conacher, how he's balancing out Tavares and Okposo more than anything.
All right, Mike, let's move on to you. You grab a question.
All right, let's go, I guess, to the next one in line. This one's from Barry. He says, hold on one second. So Barry says, long-time listener, first-time question asker. No, he doesn't. Can Cappy get these guys to play a 200-foot game? Isles cannot continue to allow teams to outshoot them and hope to win regularly, which I agree, no team in the NHL wants to get outshot every single game and just squeak by and, pray for one more goal than their opponent. I think a lot of the outshooting, especially in the Rangers game, had to do with the fact that the Islanders were up by so many goals that they tend to shell up. And, that's the case with any team in the NHL. A big difference. You look at the Corsi shot chart. Any team that's up by a couple goals in the third is going to opt to dump and chase rather than carry in. So I think you're going to see more shots against in those situations. But I think overall they've done pretty well at playing 200 feet. Like I said before, the checking line's done a good job of being responsible defensively. So I think that'll come with time. I mean, it's only 3 games, and so far so good.
All right, well, let's skip Barry's next question because we kind of answered that already. Andy asked it. That was the surprises and disappointments. So we'll move right on to another one of Barry's questions. This one's for you, Rich.
With DeHaan hopefully close to being back, is it really a simple fix to wave straight with Donovan not earning the confidence of Cappy by sitting so far? This Donovan question irks me. Donovan has not been given a fair shake. I know people disagree with me. I don't. I believe if DeHaan comes back, it makes things a lot more interesting. I don't see Cappy breaking up Leddy and Boychuk, but I don't see Straight staying on this team, and I don't see Reinhart staying on this team for much longer. I would think it's Leddy, Boychuk, Hamonic, DeHaan, Donovan, and Hickey. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think when Viz comes back, though, I think Donovan they try to pass Donovan through waivers when Wisniewski comes back.
I was afraid you'd say that. I just don't think Viz is going to be 100%. I just don't think they do that.
Maybe not. You're right.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Thanks, Barry.
All right, this one is from Zachariah. He says, Cappy seems like he knows his job is on the line too, calling out Strome and not being satisfied with the play in the first 2 periods with the win put to the side. Do you think that his new hard-nosed attitude gives him a better chance to stick around? And I'm going to say yes and no, because I'm going to say that it gives him a better chance to stick around, but not directly because of his hard-nosed attitude. I think the hard-nosed attitude is going to instill the same kind of attitude he wants from his players to play game in and game out. So I think it will help him stick around because I think his team is going to play better for him. but I don't think that it's going to automatically keep him around because he has this new hard-nosed attitude.
That's true.
And can I just say
Of course.
that Michael Wilhoft is the greatest person on this podcast?
And by the way, and he might or might not be drunk right now.
Yeah, so I'm literally catching about 50% of what you guys are saying. I did hear Shane say that I am great. I want that to be our new intro. Problem solved. Boom.
I think we do have our new intro. Let's see if we have any other questions on here. There's a lot of chat going on in here. We have one more. I believe there's only one more. So if there is, I'll just throw it up to all three of us.
No, there's more than one more. Shane, there's a lot more.
No, none of those are questions though. Look.
I'm looking.
Yeah, it looks
I'm
like
looking.
commentary.
Barry is asking another question on the top.
Yeah,
Oh, Tom agreed with me about something, which is good. Because his comment made me think, wait a minute, did I black out? But yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I get it.
All right, so let's throw up Barry's question. Barry's question is anyone surprised at how refreshing it was to hear the comments that were made by Jack and Garth? Is this the possible change of culture we have craved for so long?
I think it's comments from two guys that know it's win or lose your job. I mean, it's that simple. This year is so crucial for the franchise in so many different ways. Not only with the symbolism of Coliseum closing, but Brooklyn on the horizon, the need to make a profit, the need to make a playoff run. You saw that in the summer that Garth Snow had. You saw that in the fact that Charles Wang finally took the financial restraints off of Snow and said, you know what, I don't care how much money you spend as long as obviously it's under the cap and we don't get penalized. So I think it's two guys who realize that their backs are up against the wall. And you know what? If that's what it took to get the results that we're seeing, I'm fine with it. It really doesn't matter to me what the reason is, as long as the results are there.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. Being the last season at the Coliseum, I think maybe that plays into it a little bit too. The guys try a little bit harder, a little more cognizant of how they're perceived at home. Obviously, if the fans can keep showing up at the Coliseum and selling out weekday games, that goes a long way too. The guys, they might not say it as much, but when you come out to a half-full arena, in the middle of the season and you're trying to fight to win games, it's a little tougher. It's a little easier when the fans are there and it's loud. And we've heard so much about how it sounds during the playoffs and how it sounded during the home opener. But I do think the culture shift is coming. I think it's too early to say for sure whether it's here, but it seems like they're on the right track.
There's a unique sense of urgency because the Coliseum is closing down, if you will, because the Islanders are leaving. So I think there's nothing wrong with playing with a sense of urgency throughout the season. And if it resonates from the top down, it's only going to be a positive. I think it's something the Islanders needed. This is a kick in the butt. This is something that lacked in the middle of the season. This is something that this team needs to take all the way through the end. And if they keep it up, I think good things will come to them. I agree.
All right, and we have... Oh, sorry, Andy, go ahead.
Zach's comment here about he thinks Reinhart gets a longer leash because he's more touted than Donovan. It might be a good point, but I've never kind of been a fan of the tout game, if there's even such a thing. For me, it's all about can you play or can't you play? And right now, the NHL is a skating game. And I'm not going to totally discredit myself and say that Matt Donovan is a great skater, because I feel it's probably the one part of his game that he needs the most work on. But Reinhart literally, to me, and I'll go back to what I said earlier, in these first 3 games, has literally looked like he's skating in sand. It's not that he's making mistakes that rookies make, because those are to be expected. He literally looks like he can't keep up with the pace of the game. He's caught flat-footed quite a bit in 3 games. That's what concerns me more so. That's why I don't think Reinhart is ready. And I think that if Donovan is the logical choice at this point, which I believe he is over Reinhart and maybe even straight at this point, you got to put him in the lineup.
Yeah. At least until you figure out what's going on with Viz.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one more question before we head out, guys. Tom asks, do you think Cappy goes to Bolton or McDonald before he goes to Lee? And then he followed up with in regards to the 4th line.
Mike?
Wow, I knew that question was coming to me. Honestly, if someone doesn't perform up to expectations and it comes down to the Islanders needing to get someone in their spot, whether it's McDonald, whether it's Bolton, whether it's Lee, I think it depends on where they are in the standings at that point. If it's, and forgive me for saying this, but if it's November and they've lost, 6 or 7 in a row, And it's like, all right, we need to change. I think they might bring Lee up. If they're coasting and they're doing well in November and they need to change something for whatever reason where they need more physical presence, maybe they play Bolton for a game. That's a different story. If they call Lee up, I think he's staying. So what I'm saying is if they're going in the tank a little bit, I think Lee comes up because that is then his official introduction to the franchise, and he sticks with the team from there on out.
Who sits then?
I think that's the question, right? I mean, Pete asks too. When Grabner comes back, do you break up the checking line? You know, I don't think so right now. I think it's going very well with Cizikas, Martin, and Clutterbuck. I don't think there's really any other spot for Clutterbuck, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Grabner, you're not going to have to worry about that problem until early December. That's when Grabs is targeted to be back. So, you know what? For the next 6 weeks, let's just do what the coaches do, and let's avoid that question totally.
Works
And,
for me.
Pete, I'm not going to even answer your ESPN Showtime question, and
Barry asks another good one that we
Yeah,
can
one
grab
more, yeah.
real quick, and that
Just
is,
wanna-
it's very, very early, but with Garth putting it all in at the poker table, will he try to do more to improve the team this season?
Oh yeah.
I think record will dictate that, as Mike just alluded to. I think that whatever we see out of this lineup from now until, let's call it, the end of the year is going to purely be dictated by results and nothing else.
I think that this question very much ties into, though, the problem of Grabner coming back, and that means if all is well when Grabner does come back, do we try and move a Michael Grabner for a piece that we may be lacking in another spot? So I think it does tie in well.
Yeah, I mean, but what are you going to put Grabner on the fourth line? You can't do that.
You're going to get like a 26th defenseman in the system?
Or that. Yeah, exactly.
Why not? or we could pull a Rangers and we could trade Michael Grabner to get some of the refs in our pocket.
No, believe me, if there's a chance to trade a Michael Grabner and a Michael Grabner +1 for, let's say, again, let's go back to the conversation of a top line 40-goal winger, which doesn't grow on trees, as we said time and time again with defensemen, and then we go out and get Boychuk and Leddy, so that's shot that to crap. But who knows what happens? Again, I think that what Mike said was perfectly on the ball. I think that wins losses is going to dictate what Garth Snow needs to or needs not to do as we close out the year, looking way ahead.
All right, so as we close out the show, then, do you trade Michael Grabner +1 for Thomas Vanek?
No.
Every day and twice on Sunday. Are you guys kidding me?
I had to throw that one out there, guys. All right. Thank you guys for listening to and watching and enjoying and asking questions on the Dump and Chase podcast. Again, I apologize for the late start tonight. I won't promise it'll never happen again, but I will cross my fingers and hope that it doesn't happen again. At least it doesn't happen often. We had a lot of good things to talk about tonight, and I know we're going to hope we have a lot of the good things to talk about throughout the rest of the season. Andy Graziano at Tasman19, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Nope, just IslandersInsight.com, guys. Keep going, keep reading, keep linking, keep sharing. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back at you next week with more great Islanders talk.
And Rich Diaz Rodriguez, is there anything you'd like to plug?
No, I just
at
want to
RDNHL.
Thank you. Gentlemen, for a lovely evening.
I feel so wrong. The way there's something so wrong about this.
Thank you, Shane and Andy, for these wonderful mics. And we'll see you here next week.
Oh my God.
Michael Wilhoff at Michael Wilhoff, is there anything you'd like to plug?
No, I think we're well off the rails at this point. Just IslandersInsight.com. Thanks for all the support, guys. We really appreciate it.
I am so disturbed right now.
All right, and I'm Shane Blackburn. You can follow me at ShaneBNHL. Make sure you check out the DumpandChasePodcast.com, IslandersInsight.com. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube, and check us out every Wednesday night as we bring you live Islanders commentary. And Rich, do me a favor. When we shut off this hangout, write the show description for me.
Yes.
This has been the Dump and Chase podcast. For Andy, Mike, and Rich, I'm Shane. And until next week, let's go Islanders. 3-0, baby.
He shoots, he scores.